I'm walking through the Reformation series that Desiring God put together to give you a fuller history of Christianity. Join me.
John Knox. You hear that name, and what comes to mind? Probably a lone, fearless prophet, right? The guy who reformed all of Scotland by himself. But what if that heroic story, as powerful as it is just, well, part of the picture? Let's dive in and see if we can separate the man from the legend. And this right here, this is pretty much the main takeaway from the popular story of John Knox's life. It's super inspiring, right? It paints this picture of him as a divinely empowered hero. But today, we're going to pull that narrative apart a little bit and see what else is going on under the surface.
Okay, so first things first, we have to get a handle on the legend itself. I mean, let's really look at this powerful, heroic image of John Knox that's been passed down for centuries. It's so important because it's basically the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about.
Prophet, patriot, legend. I mean, these three words, they just perfectly sum up how most people see Knox. He's the fiery prophet standing up for what's right, the patriot fighting for his country's very soul, and, at the end of the day, a legend whose story is meant to inspire us.
All right, so let's walk through the story that most of us probably know. You'll see it's a classic hero's journey, you know? It's got all the good stuff, trial, transformation, and of course, a big triumph.
So at his very core, Knox is remembered as the architect of the Scottish Reformation. And get this, he didn't just change a few minds, he built an entire institution, the Presbyterian Kirk, that would go on to shape Scotland for centuries to come. That's a huge deal.
And his journey is just incredible. He starts out as a Catholic priest, part of the very system he's about to tear down. Then his conversion leads to some serious persecution. He gets captured and is forced to be a galley slave on a French ship for 19 months. Can you even imagine? After he's finally released, he finds his way to Geneva, studies under the great John Calvin, and then makes this epic, triumphant return to Scotland to lead the whole Reformation. It's a seriously dramatic story.
And what's so fascinating is what Knox himself said about his time with Calvin. He saw Geneva not just as some city, it was the blueprint for a perfect Christian society. And that vision, that became the driving force behind everything he tried to build when he got back to Scotland. Okay, but this is where our story takes a pretty sharp turn. We've seen the legend, right? Now it's time to look at the historical realities, the stuff that's often, left on the cutting room floor. So whenever you hear a story that's this clean, this heroic, it's always worth asking, but is that the whole story? And when it comes to John Knox, oh boy, is there ever more to it.
And this really gets right to the heart of the matter. On one side, you've got the theological hero, this lone prophet filled with the Spirit. But on the other side, you have a strategic political revolutionary, a major player in what was essentially a national civil war. The truth? He was absolutely both.
So let's break down what that political reality actually looked like. Look, the Reformation wasn't just a bunch of sermons. It involved violent iconoclasm. We're talking about the widespread destruction of churches and centuries of religious art. Knox's success? It was totally tied to his alliance with powerful Scottish nobles, and believe me, they had their own political goals. He published these ferocious attacks on Catholic female rulers, and in the end, he fused church and state, creating a national church that was inseparable from civic power. These are messy, complicated things that just don't fit into that neat and tidy hero story.
All right, so to get an even clearer picture, let's try something. Let's look at this from a completely different angle. How do Knox's methods stack up against the early church? The very model he said he was trying to restore. And wow, this table really lays out the stark contrast. Let's take power. For Knox, it was all about political revolt. But the early church, facing down the Roman Empire, their model was patient suffering and even martyrdom. What about unity? Knox created a national covenant, basically binding Scotland together as one nation under one faith. The early church, though, found its unity in a universal sacramental life that went way beyond national borders. And leadership. Knox was famous for his prophetic, in-your-face confrontation. The early church fathers, on the other hand, constantly emphasized pastoral gentleness. It's a night and day difference. So you have this idea, right? It's the cornerstone of the whole popular story. God empowered simple men like Knox to do great things. It's a really powerful idea. But now, just listen to how different the tone is in this next quote. This comes from Gregory the Great, a really big deal in the early church. And for him, the ideal leader isn't just strong, they're also gentle. See the difference? They don't just confront, they help carry the burdens of their flock. The emphasis is just so different. It's a pastoral ideal of leadership that feels like it's from another planet compared to Knox's confrontational style.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. If the real history is this complicated, then how on earth did the simple, heroic legend become the main story? Well, the answer, as it so often is, lies in the art of storytelling.
Yeah, historical legends like this don't just happen, they are carefully crafted. First, you cast Knox in the role of an Old Testament prophet, like an Elijah figure standing up to evil rulers. Then you frame his success as this story of divine election, God choosing the little guy over the powerful. His movement gets turned into a national covenant, making Scotland feel like a new, chosen nation. And finally, and this is key, the story gets sanitized. You kind of gloss over the messy parts, the violence, the political games, the coercion.
So when it's all said and done, who was John Knox really? Well, he was absolutely a fiery prophet of covenant and conscience, but he was also someone who fused spiritual reform with political revolution. And in doing that, he didn't just forge a church, he helped forge a modern Scottish national identity. His life story really embodies both the glory of what he accomplished and the very real dangers of the methods he used to do it.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really crucial question to think about. Look, simple stories are powerful, no doubt about it. They inspire people, they unify them, they help create an identity. But that simplicity, it always comes at a cost. So we have to ask ourselves, when we pick a simple story over a complex history, who actually benefits?